Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today is going to be a fun technique to try. We are going to do a double see-through panel. We want to be able to see through the entire card, front to back, and we're going to make some windows. We are going to be using some dies to do this. However, as usual, I want to give you several different options for what you could potentially use. So I am going to go for a rectangle window down the right hand side. Now it doesn't matter, you could do a circle, you can do a rectangle, you can do a star, you can do a moon, whatever shape you like. I am going for rectangular down this side here. I could do it down the left hand side as well, but I think I want to go for the right hand side. Now, here's some options that you could use. Number one, this is the Paper Rose stitched banners, which again is an absolute staple in my crafting space. And you could use one of the smaller sizes, even the smallest or the second smallest, and you could put this down this side here. It fits nicely. Even the bigger one actually would work pretty well, or you could use the bigger one to make a frame for the smaller one. So that would be one option that you could use, some kind of long banner dies. It might be a double-ended banner, it might be the single like this one, just depends what you've got in your stash. This is the mixed scalloped rectangle dies from LDRS. Now you could do these couple ones here, and again, it doesn't have to be down the right hand side, it could just be I'm just aiming for like a long, slimmer window. These beautiful ovals from Spellbinders, again, I'm not sure if these are available anymore, but you get the idea, that like a long, slim option. And then there is this one here, which is the Layering Mini Slimline. I don't think these are also available, but these are from Spellbinders. There are so many other companies out there that do, honestly, very, very similar. Slimline was really popular like a couple of years ago in particular, but it seems to have quietened down a little bit, but nonetheless, I never really got into it, but I did end up with this die set, and maybe because for things like this. So I'm going to use two of these nesting dies, and I'm going to use the smaller one to cut the actual shape, and then I'm of course going to use the larger one to create the frame. From here, I'm going to take the smaller of the two rectangles. I'm going to take some mint tape or any low tack tape to hold this in place while I pop this through with my die cutting machine. Now this is straight into the card base, and I want to do that because depending on the thickness of your cardstock that you're using, it may or may not cut one or two layers at once. So don't flatten it out like this. I want you to keep it as a folded card and run it through just like this here. So as I said, depending on the thickness, it'll cut through either one or two layers. If it cuts through two, brilliant, you've done your job. If it cuts through one, it's okay because it's going to leave an impression on the middle layer, and that way you know you can line up your die exactly, and the window is going to be a perfect match in the front and in the back. So if it doesn't cut through the second layer, that's okay. Here, it only cut through the top layer perfectly, and then it left the second one here that I can line up the die and send it through. So it doesn't matter which one you end up with. Make sure you keep your card closed as you run it through your die cutting machine. If, however, you only wanted your window to go on the front layer only and not right through the entire card, then by all means, just do it. Open your card as it runs through your die cutting machine, and that will give you a window just for the front. Now, also something to think about here is the stability of what's left from your die cutting. I have chosen this shape specifically because my card is still going to be strong enough, and there's enough stability with the cardstock that's left to hold it up no matter even if I don't have a window, because actually nothing will be in the second window. I'm not going to put acetate in that one, only the front one. So it needs enough structure there to hold it in place. So just be careful about how big you are die cutting. Now, this one here, I've added the two frames together. These are purely to get some frames to stack up. So I will die cut this out a couple of times so that I've got a couple of frames that I can stack up and pop on the front. As I said, we're going to create a window, and I'm actually going to pop something inside that window too, just for a little bit of decoration. So run that through my die cutting machine a couple of times. You could have 2 or 3 frames even stacked up. If you want to make life easier at this point, I would suggest putting some kind of double-sided adhesive sheets on the back of this cardstock as you die cut it. As you can see, these frames are fairly dainty, But actually I have some really thin double-sided tape that I have managed to pop on the back here, whichever way you find easiest. You could also use some liquid glue, except for the bottom layer where liquid glue onto acetate sometimes ends up with, sliding and smudging, but we can make anything work, of course. So I have got 2 sheets of acetate cut. I cut those with the larger of the 2 rectangle dies that I used. And I also gave them a tiny little trim with a pair of scissors just so that they didn't quite hit my window, so that everything would sort of fit nice. But truly it was like a hair of a line off the side of the acetate so that it was going to be big enough, because there's actually a really fine balance here between the larger die and the smaller die of these rectangles I've used. So I've popped down some double-sided tape on the top. Then I'm going to pop down my acetate window. This is only going to be on the top layer. So you can see acetate there, but none on the second one. And then I want to fill this a little bit. Now, I think this could be fun. Like if you added just a little hair of glitter in there, like a tiny sprinkle, that would be fun to trap in between here. You could trap basically anything. I'm wanting to keep this really super neutral. I'm going to use the Christmas branch die. Now, I am very sad to say that this has been discontinued. Even though this is, of course, it does have Christmas in the title, this has been my ultra go-to, and I used it in a previous video, and then I got plenty of questions asking, where's it gone? It makes me really sad to report that it has been discontinued, but nonetheless, it's a generic branch die, and I'm sure you've got something that you can use. I am just fitting some pieces in here. And I'm making sure some of them go over the edge enough that they are trapped on the adhesive on the side. But not too much, of course, because I have a really fine margin to work with here. If you make your frame sort of 2 steps bigger with the nesting dies, then you're going to have much more room to work with. So that could be an option as well. Then I add the second piece of acetate on top, and therefore we have a little window with that, with those items. In this case, it's some white foliage trapped inside. You could leave the window completely clear if you wanted to as well. Now it's time to add in the frames. This is going to cover up the edges of those die cut branches, and it's going to cover all of the adhesive and give it that nice, clean, polished, finished look, and also a little tiny bit of dimension when it comes to the frames. So this is kind of the base of the card, just a really fun element without damaging the structural integrity of the card base itself. So really, really fun. That is the main element here, and then we're going to decorate and finish off and make this, of course, into a finished card. Now you can take this in any direction you want to go. At the moment, I would say this is good for so many different occasions. But for this one, I have a little fruit stamps die set, that I've been wanting to use, and today is the day. Now, I will say this one is from Elizabeth Craft Designs. I'm not a big fan of putting together sort of 100 little die cuts. I just don't have the patience for it, and I'm not good at it. And honestly, it's not really what makes me happy. And we all have our different preferences. And my preference is sort of less pieces is more. And so this is just my style. And that's okay if it's not your style. This is definitely just my style. I like easy put together. My brain often feels like there's a lot going on, as with everybody's lives. But so thinking too hard about where pieces have to go is not always for me. So these fruits here, this is so simple. You cut the lemons. Of course, it has all of that texture in the die cuts as well, which I love. And then I'm going to I added the squeezed lemonade to the center of the lemons. I added some a mustard seed to the outside to give it a little bit of dimension, and I'm doing the same here with the twisted citron in the middle, and then some mowed lawn, and then we'll come in with a little fine brush for some finer details. Just to give these a little bit more of an edging and a look, I'm also going to come in with some vintage photo, just some brown distress oxide ink. I'm going to paint almost the stem there, the little stalk, and then also decided to go around my lemons and my leaves with this little bit of brown. You could absolutely skip this step, And then I got my finger in this somewhere along the journey, and I also got some brown into one of the lemons. So I go ahead and add some more, because if I add more, it makes it look like it was always meant to be there. In theory, this would be where I would want this to finish, but you know, that's okay. I think right there is where I got that extra little bit of brown. And then I try and cover it up with a little bit more squeezed lemonade, but that doesn't necessarily work. So we just add more, and that's how the lemons came to be. No fruit is perfect. There are always imperfections, and I'm going to go with that theory for this one. It also gives them a little more interest as well. So I've got my lemons good to go. This one is the Sending Sunshine from Creative Expressions, and I am also sad to say this favorite is also discontinued. It feels like I couldn't really find it anywhere, and it's just a staple, but nonetheless, you know, you have those in your stash too, so use what you have and are good to go. As I mentioned, this is just a versatile card layout with the double see-through window design, and so that's why I'm taking the opportunity to use these gorgeous fresh fruit. Having some more fruity sentiments might be something that I need to look out for, but I'm in no hurry to do that too. I just really enjoy these gorgeous fruit, and this one says, the sentiment says, "You are such a sweet friend," which, you know, we just mix and match companies, and although it wasn't necessarily meant to go together, it's going to work perfectly fine. I decided to stamp this in some warm cocoa ink. Now this is, I just, you know, moving away from just the black, I thought that would be a little bit different, and I've got some brown sort of in the lemon there, so just trying to give something else a go. The Gina K is a beautiful stamping ink, so I like that. These words aren't too fine. I probably held it down on the paper for just a second too long, but that's okay, we're good to go. I did feel like we needed this card, I just need to finish it off, and you'll see how I do that in a minute. It felt a little bit at the moment, it just didn't feel finished. So let's work on that. Nonetheless, I'm going to pop up the leaves and one of the lemons for this one here. Super simple to put together, really my kind of style. So I like how these turned out, and I really wanted an excuse to be able to use them, because sometimes these things just bring us joy. So I've got my little lemon leaves there, and then I'll pop this other one in front. You could pop it behind or in front, either would work. And then at this point, this is where I knew that I wanted to finish it off somehow. I'm going to add in a sort of a unique border. I just use a little T-ruler to make sure that my lines are straight, and then I sort of create a border. Again, this didn't feel super finished, so I'm just going to add in some little, like a larger dot in the corner, and then a couple of other dots at the end of each line. You could also add in a little bit of brown splatter. I think that would look nice, but honestly, I think this just finished the card off really well. Little fine details are what I love to do at the end. Nothing not necessarily complicated, but just smaller finishing touches. And then I thought, why not add in a little lemon into the center? I'm going to cut this apart so it's just one lemon. I've got the larger one of the two, and I'm not going to use any dimension because it's in the middle of my card. I want it to lay nice and flat, and so I just used glue to pop these down, but yeah, a nice little carryover rather than stamping a sentiment in the middle. And that is going to be my double see-through card panel for today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you give this one a go, please post some pictures on my Facebook group, which is Come Crafting with Natasha. Of course, there are links down below. I would love to see your makes and creations. Other than that, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.